We're live. We're ready. We're warmed up and ready to go
That's right.
here on the In-Ring Wrestling Podcast. Whether you're watching live
Sir.
on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Instagram, if you're a fan of buttered sausage or not, we have the
Sir.
place for you to be on a Sunday night. Better late than never. I apologize. Casey. Today was like house cleaning day, so we were doing a bunch of little projects upstairs because originally I was going to work outside and get stuff done, but it rained. So just started working, doing stuff, shampooing the carpet and moving furniture around and this, that, and the other. Had pizza and all of a sudden looked at my clock and it's like, oh my God, it's 8:20. So
hey, it's all good.
ran
We're
downstairs.
Here.
Yeah.
But the question of the day is, Kevin, what do you think of butter sausage?
Now, what do you think of butter sausage?
It's
It is
been
the
an
question.
exciting week, hasn't it?
Well, listen, we put up an episode on Thursday talking all about the controversy with R-Truth being released, and because we went and we put our names, reputations, and everything on the line, it was solely because of the In-Ring Wrestling Podcast that not 24 hours ago, R-Truth is back as Ron Killings. He has returned to the WWE.
He was on Money in the Bank. I meant everything. I mean, first of all, the cat was out of the bag that Kevin Kelly, when he was in the WWE in talent relations, he discovered Ron Killings.
Yeah.
Quick now, R-Truth. Yeah,
with
Terry Taylor, whatever. And now, but then we decided, you know what? Kevin called me and says, you know what? We got to go and put an episode up because there's some crazy stuff going on to someone that I helped bring into business. And we can't stand for that. And then all of a sudden we do an episode. We go mini viral and, people are talking about it. I get my phone's blown off the hook. People arguing about it. And next thing you know, I get woke up this morning like at 7 o'clock in the morning saying, he's back.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of the way it goes. I love your shirt, by the way. Old Flapjack. There he is.
Yes, and I think we both owe a lot of gratitude to this man.
Yes. He was, I tell you, my experience with Blackjack Mulligan was going and picking him up at his house in Claremont and driving him to different towns. And while I did enjoy the secondhand smoke, I also enjoyed the stories and the lessons learned.
Did you drive?
One of the, huh?
Were you the driver? Were you the wheelman?
Of course, I was the driver. He couldn't see.
Oh, see, when I rode a Jack, he was the wheelman. I don't know if he could see or not, but I'm not sure. And we were doing I told this before. We were doing a double shot. We did a day show with is IWF up in Ocala. I think it was some car dealership. And then we were doing Winter Haven that night at Land O'Lakes Civic Center in Winter Haven.
That's right.
And Jack was doing it, and it was pouring down rain on the ride back. And he's there with his little Winston-Salem cigarette, which looks like a toothpick in his big old mitten hands, and reading a newspaper while he's driving in the pouring down rain. And the whole way I'm just with the whole oh shit handle, I thought I was going to die. But, I guess that's how they did it in the old times with those old timers. So,
Well, that's how you kept your promos topical. You had to know current events. You had to know what was going on. Like us, for example. I mean, we were right there on top of it. We were right there. Breaking news, R-Truth canned. Let's get on there. Let's do a podcast. And, WWE decided to throw us a curveball and re-sign the guy. So the big question now is, two questions. Did R-Truth, was his release a work from the beginning? Or number two, did they relent to overwhelming public pressure and decide to bring him back when they had made the decision to release? What do you think, Casey?
Well, I mean, I've been hearing mixed emotions from everyone. A lot of people say it's a work. Even Triple H was trying to say it was a work. And I guess little Killings, Rod's boy on X there, kind of threw Hunter under the bus and told him it was, stop with playing the games. It wasn't a work. So I guess he was all worried about his dad and his way of life and his lifestyle from the loss of income. I personally think that I think there was a lot of backlash from the boys and the women there in the WWE universe, and I mean, guys were taking their profile, anything from their WWE profiles on their social media accounts. I mean, there was a lot of backlash from it, and then not even talk about all the people, in the on the internet. So I honestly think that it kind of woke them up a little bit and made them think like, whoa, we need to rethink this one. I think it was like a shoot. I think it was legit.
Yeah, I do
That's
too.
my own opinion.
And I know Blue Meanie had gotten reprieve, as JR told him. It was a reprieve from the warden because when he got let go, the Save the Meanie campaign started on even social media as small as it was back then. But
Right.
he was brought back because of all the negativity that was foisted upon the company upon news of the release of the Blue Meanie. So,
And was it JBL's job to run him off then?
that was an unfortunate situation that was luckily rectified, and everything wound up being okay. But when you look at somebody like R-Truth, you have to wonder, okay, now what? Because he was so well known and loved as a underneath silly character who would pop up every once in a while. Now, does this mean that 53 years old Ron Killings is going to be shot up to a higher position on the card? And is he physically still capable of doing that? Is he interested in doing that? He certainly saved his job for now, but what is this new job going to mean?
Well, maybe it's the WWE's way of getting back at all the internet and everyone. Yeah, we're going to bring him back. We're going to pull him full time on the road, and we're going to work his ass into the ground and just make him quit.
Yeah.
Because can his body hold up? I don't know. I don't know what kind of shape he's in and, stuff like that. How, kind of injuries he's had and different things like that. But I can tell you, I sure as hell wouldn't be able to handle a full-time schedule.
He doesn't
And I'm
look
the
any
same
different
age,
than
53
right.
years old.
He doesn't look any different now than he did then.
Yeah, that's
And
true, though.
I don't know
look
if
a
he
little
still
bit.
smokes. I know he was a smoker back then. We were always like, Ron, you got to quit that. But that was back in 2001, 2002.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So, who knows? And with a new, now I guess he's going under his real name, which is fine. Nobody cares. It's not like, oh no, they're not going to call him R-Truth anymore. That immediately says to me that it says to me he's going to come back and be different.
I think he probably likes that because then he won't have to worry about when he's gone. Guys that they leave one place, go another, and they totally different different name. Had to reinvent themselves where people realize, oh yeah, that was whoever.
Right.
So there's a
Which,
few
by
guys
the way,
I know.
let's tell that story real quick. I know that Vince was always a big proponent of giving guys new names. Now, there were some guys, of course, that you couldn't because they were just so well known. So that would be where they would try to throw in a nickname or a middle name or a something name, some other moniker to get them to be known by, that they could own. We can't trademark your real name or what you used to be known as. But think about it this way, folks. Vince is very petty, very possessive. It's not necessarily that they want to own it. It's that if you leave, they don't want you being known by what you were called in the WWE.
Right.
It's a similarity, but it's a difference. You know what I mean?
This goes back many, many, many years. I'll give you an example. Mike Rotunda. Is it Rotunda or Rotundo? Because it depends where he's at. In Florida, it was Rotundo, his real name. In WWE, is Rotunda.
And I always thought his last name was Rotunda because that was the WWE spelling of it.
I just thought someone didn't know how to spell his name, I guess.
Well, there was probably that too. I remember when the Great Muta debuted in WCW in 1989. One week he was Moto, the next week he was Muto, and then he was Muta, and they finally settled
Yeah.
on Muta. His real last name, of course, KG Muto, Muto. Okay, so now, if you are one of the other WWE superstars who has recently been released, and I think there was, let's say, around 20 or so that were let go, mostly from the NXT brand, are you also ringing the phones of people that you know to begin the campaign to get you back via social media? Is that something that may be limited to someone like an R-Truth? Or could some of the lesser known younger athletes who were just beginning their careers, could they also hope for some of the same benefit?
I don't think so. I think first of all, it's not a generic thing where they just manufacture it to happen. It's a natural reaction. And the natural reaction when R-Truth that's been there for 17 years, that's a
Right.
long time. That's how long at one point the Undertaker, when he was full time, he was there 17 years, you know, and when he left. So I mean that's you start 17 years, you can go from watching it as a kid, growing up having kids, a teenager, growing up having your own kids, watching it together. So now you have
Yep.
multiple generations watching R-Truth. So yeah, I think if you're going to manufacture it, I mean, because I sometimes watch these videos of all the people released, and I'm like, who's that person? They're like, oh, they were with WWE for 7 years or 10 years. I'm like, I don't even know who they are. So I
Right.
mean, that tells you, you know, right there that I don't think that could happen. I think R-Truth is someone that's special, and I don't think it was just because of the internet personally. I think because of the backlash from all the his peers backstage has spoken up enough to where it got the attention from the management, and they're like, you know what, this is not good for morale for one, and two, you know, let's give them happy here because we're going to probably cut the hell out of a lot of other stuff coming up soon. So let's give them a
Right.
bone and let them be happy for something.
Now, and again, of course, the early word, as soon as the release was announced, that Brian James was somebody who was very unhappy about this. He and R-Truth had a great relationship. They
Right.
had been friends for a long time. The first thing that R-Truth did when he joined the main roster as K-Quick, he was a tag team partner with the Road Dogg. So perhaps some of that inner circle spoke with Triple H, and Triple H was able to convince the purse strings over at TKO that this is one that we needed to relent on. Does Triple H now go back, and does he have a little bit of more say so, let's say, with who gets released and who doesn't going forward? Do you think that this changes the dynamic at all?
I think one, we're never going to know who really pulled the strings because you read on the internet too also that, it took, Nick Khan to, finally get a hold of R-Truth and call him to come to do TV to sit down and work everything out.
Yeah,
So I think the best thing for wrestling is for Triple H to, have the control on that stuff personally. A lot of
agreed.
people, I've been hearing a lot of mixed opinions about him, and, people are like, he's on his way down, this and that. I think he's doing a really good job. I think
Put a pin in that for a second. Put a pin in that for a second, because a couple of well-known names on the internet who know things that have gone on in the WWE in the past, of course, Vince Russo and the coach, Jonathan Coachman, have both gone on the record as saying they believe, they don't know this to be fact, but they believe that Triple H would be on his way out the door at some point in the near future. Well, again, I mean, that's every booker has a start date and an end date. And only even Vince McMahon did. We used to say that Vince would be found dead at his desk with a pencil in his hand, and that would be how his tenure would come to an end. Such was not
right,
the case. But again, where there's smoke, there's fire. And there's, how much fighting and how much control does Triple H have? How much power does Triple H have? I think he's done an outstanding job. I think he's done an awesome job. because you never want to be the guy that follows the greatest of all time. And love him or hate him,
Right.
Vince and what he was able to do with WWE is the greatest of all time. You don't want to
Sure.
follow Bill Belichick. You don't want to follow, a legendary quarterback. You don't want to be the next guy after the guy because you're going to get forgotten about. You're going to get, your immediate comparison is to him. Luckily for Triple H, Vince's reputation went in the toilet because of his own actions, his own decisions, and it made it
So
a
did
little
Bill
easier
Belichick.
for Triple H to step into that role.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That
You know,
definitely took some of the pressure off.
right. And again, I think he's done a great job, Casey. You agree, I know, and I don't see any problem because business is up, revenues are up. I mean, you could say whatever you want to say about whether or not the product is any good. That's a personal taste matter. All I know
Right.
is that's what everybody talks about is WWE.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that, like in my promotion here that I'm running in Carlisle, the first thing I'm asked is it like WWE? Well, no, it's different. It's completely different because we're not going to go down and do adult situations and we're not going to do dramatic presentations.
Right.
We're just going to do wrestling matches.
Yeah.
And it's going to be very easy. But again, that's what you're compared to. You're always compared to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, when I had my promotion, I always had a little catchphrase, wrestling the way it's supposed to be, old
Yeah.
school, so that's how I prefer it. But, like things change and everything evolves and but I do enjoy listening to all the people on the internet with their predictions and how their WWE's on the downward spiral. They're going out of business. They're $5 billion. It's TKO, but they all think it's just WWE. So it's quite humorous just to the early morning reading, just scrolling through the social media platforms and just reading people's perception on WWE and different things in wrestling.
I'm sending just a quick hello to everybody on the In-Ring Wrestling Podcast chat. Our man Steve Oliveira in Portugal, of course. You would think we only have an audience of one, Casey, but such is not the case. You were telling me some of these numbers, and I'm flabbergasted. I'm floored. Flim-flammed almost. I'm not being flim-flammed, am I? These numbers are legit?
Yeah, we said from the beginning that we weren't expecting to skyrocket. We knew that it was a marathon, it's not a sprint, all that kind of stuff. And we're putting the time in. The most important thing is being consistent. So we're consistent in putting content up all the time. So we're trying to do that, give you guys something every day to be able to look in there and see. But when I look through and I look at YouTube and all that to see where everything's United States, UK, Australia, Germany, Holland, India. I mean, it just goes on and on. All the different countries that people are tuning in and listening to you and me.
Yeah.
It's just I'm like sitting there. I'm like, this is unbelievable. It's kind of it's flattering that we know that there's people in India that don't even speak our language that's listening to us and listening to our perspective on in our experiences with wrestling and sharing it to them and giving them a little insight, a little behind the scenes, look at what we've went through. Yeah, it's kind of cool to see that.
It is nice, and the numbers have been great. And thank you to everybody who, whether you watch us live or whether you're catching the shorts or you're downloading the whole thing and listening to it after the fact. So whether or not Triple H is able to cement his spot, whether or not, TKO is going to be looking for someone else, obviously a change of booker can be a very tumultuous thing in a locker room. Now, when I was in WWE all through the Attitude Era, other than Pat Patterson deciding to kind of retire and move to Florida full time and not deal with TV, but just come to pay-per-views, it was pretty much the same crew. Vince, Bruce, Kevin Dunn, Pat Patterson for TVs, Vince Russo for the most part till he left. And the writers started to begin to filter in. But when you were in WCW, there were quite a few changes, and you were there for, from everything from as soon as TBS bought it and started doing tapings outside of the Carolinas, and George Scott, and then Bill Watts, and Ric Flair.
Dusty.
Yeah, it was right. It was Dusty forever. Then it became Crockett for a little while. Then it was George Scott. Then George Scott got fired, and they gave the book to Flair and the committee.
Right.
And then after Flair, it was Ole, and then after Ole, it was Bill Watts. So that takes us through to like 1993. But then I lost after it was Watts. I lost who was who. But anyway, what did those changes mean to you in terms of what your job was going to be, how you were going to do your job, who you would reach out to and contact as far as whether or not you were booked? How did that affect your way of life?
Well, I mean, at my level, it wasn't as a drastic change. I mean, besides, like say when Bill Watts came in, he decided that we're going to get rid of the pads around the floor. This is real wrestling. We don't need to have that. No more over the top. And then you had different bookers. You'd have to have a ring jacket. If you didn't have a ring jacket, and then you couldn't wear the same colored trunks. So if I was wearing black and I'm wrestling, say, for instance, the Nasty Boys, since they had black on, I had to go change. I mean, these are the kind of things that you would have to, endure and stuff like that. I think the biggest issue, which we spoke about, was people looking at the hard camera, different things like that. But for the most part, Jody Hamilton was there most of the time. He was the booker for enhancement guys. They go through different people. David Penzer was one of them. You had, Mike Jackson, different guys, Italian Stallion. Everyone had it. Then Jody left. Jody was moved out. Paul Orndorff had it. And then when everything moved down to Florida, Paul was the enhancement guy, booker or whatever, and Paul just came to me because I was friends with, Kevin Sullivan, and so he's like, I'm just going to go with you, and he wanted, which, excuse me, I find this very funny for what he told me he was looking for. I want a good, good-looking guy that looks like a wrestler, good attitude, good young Christian men, and I'm like, okay, Paul, no problem. He never checked their faith or anything like that to see, but just what he was looking for was, quite interesting and everything. But yeah, there was a lot of changes through the years. You just kind of rolled with them. A lot of it was wasn't nothing drastic for me. It was just my job. Basically, at the end of the night, I'm gonna be looking at the lights here in 1, 2, 3, and the bell rings. So it didn't change for me one way or another. But some of the policies changed, which were, interesting. We never had to wear business attire or anything like that, like WWE did when they had their big. Were you there when they had the big change where I'm wearing Zubas and tank tops to have to wear business attire?
Oh yeah, and the worst that it was on was the women, because the women had to get all made up and then come to the building all made up. Like they could not have left the gym, put a nice outfit on and come. They had to put their face on and then go. So it was worse for them than anybody else. Yeah.
So they were told they had to be looking, TV ready.
Vince doesn't want to see you looking like you just came from the gym. He only wants to see you as a star, which is kind of true, because I always said Vince saw life with a TV screen glued to his face, and that was all he saw, was what he saw on TV. So if he would see, like let's say, Casey, if you wore face paint, if he saw you without the face paint, he wouldn't like that. It would throw him off. And it's one of the reasons why Randy Savage would show up to the building early before all the boys, before all the production people would get there, before Vince would get there. And he would be, in the Macho Man gear when Vince would walk in, because he knew one side of it was he knew that was a Vince thing. And the other side of it is Randy never wanted to be seen as less than what he was, which was a star. So it was a little bit of paranoia on Randy's part, but a little bit of knowing which way the wind blew, knowing that was a Vince Picadillo. So he did accordingly. It just happened to match up with his personality. But for some of the boys, it was like, what do you want me to do? I have to wear a suit now, but I wrestle in, cut off jeans and a t-shirt. I have to dress nicely to come to building to then grunge out to go wrestle. What is this? Why are we doing this? And stupid Johnny Ace, of course, had no spine and could never push back against anything Vince said. Took everything literally, and just, that was all that, Vince said it became gospel.
Do you think Terry Taylor ever sat at home saying, God, I wish Vince would have had that rule all those years ago? I might not have had all the heat against myself. Because wasn't that one of the big things is he would come in dressed like a Flair with the suit on and everything, and people were kind of like, you're kind of pushing it and different things like that.
Terry had a knack for getting heat, as we both know, both with the boys and with the fans, mostly with the boys. But Terry also will be the first to tell you that he didn't do things, that he didn't make the smartest decisions in the world, and sometimes, that heat was justifiable. But yeah, I mean, there could be any number. I don't remember any of the boys ever going to Vince and saying, I wish these guys would dress more like me. Because even Triple H would show up, and he would have a T-shirt on, and he would have, gym pants on, and everybody would be kind of casual. And it was of course, those of us in the office, whatever the dress code was in the office, that was kind of what we had to do. There was a time when we had to wear ties in the office, and that was ridiculous. But that was the rule, and that was the dress code. Then it changed.
I remember one thing that stood out to me when my first time wrestling with WWF, and this is back in 1991, that all the office guys would have suits on or, a tie. They might have took the jacket off, but all of them had sneakers on with it.
Right.
And I always got I don't know why, I always got a kick out of that.
Yeah, because you're on your feet, 10, 12 hours, and you got to run back and forth between the locker room and the truck, or the locker room and Vince's office, or the ring and Vince and whatever. And, if we were counting steps back then, we would all have been, 10,000 plus a day. But sort of the generational thing of wearing a tie and wearing a suit and tie kind of went by the wayside in the late 90s, early 2000s, the Attitude Era. And, again, we shifted to a more business casual attire. And, they gave us announcers shirts to wear, and they pretty much gave everybody shirts to wear. So that was more or less our uniform. I never showed up in a T-shirt and shorts for the production meeting. I was always dressed for the day. And sometimes
I will tell you that the boys, from WWF and basically all male wrestlers probably around the world really kept Zubas in business.
Yes.
Because everyone had Zubas on.
What an amazing time it was. Zubas, a fanny pack, and a gym T-shirt.
Yep.
That would be it. Or a strip club T-shirt. Whatever they got for free.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Oh, when you're
do you still, let me ask you this. No, let me ask you this. Do you still have Zubas? I've seen you wear them before. Do you still have any? Are they still, together? Because they really don't make them anymore.
No, and I wish I did, because they were really, really comfortable. And I'm not sure what happened to my last pair. My last pair I had were white and blue, whatever, lightning bolts going down it or whatever it might have been. And I actually stole those from someone else too. And Zuba theft was a big thing back in the day. because the boys would not hesitate to steal a pair of Zubas from another guy. You know, you didn't lock them up. Someone's going to swipe those bad boys. And you
Damn.
wear them the next week. And like, yeah, I bought these last week. I've seen it. We were on a trip with this a Florida guy. We were doing we were out in Topeka, Kansas, and he just got a settlement or an inheritance, I think it was. And so he was like buying all kinds of new shoes. He bought he had Reggie Parks make him the championship from wrestling Florida belt. And he had everything. And I remember one guy was like, hey, he had this really nice leather coat sitting in the back of the van. And this guy's like, took it and put it on. And he's like, hey, I had that same jacket. He's like, oh, I'd be damned. Yeah. He stole it from him.
Just didn't
The
even
belt,
know.
yeah, he was half baked. He brought this big old giant, probably a half a pound of weed on the trip. Then it got thrown out the window. He got arrested in one state. We left him and went to the next. I think we went to Missouri after that, from or St. Louis or somewhere like that. I remember Kevin Sullivan. I guess I'll say allegedly, but I know for a fact he did because I was there when he did it. He stole that Reggie Parks, Florida Heavyweight Championship belt from him. So, this guy bought all this stuff, and everyone's like, he was the dumbest guy in the world. He's like, oh yeah, I got the same thing from
Oh my
boots. I mean, you
God.
name it. Everyone was just taking everything from him. But some points, the boys, they're pretty vicious. They would take anything that wasn't tacked down.
Because they were all,
I remember
they knew that this guy was a mark. They knew this guy was a mark and was going to just fall for anything. What's he going to do? Fight? Obviously not.
I remember wrestling Jerry Gray shows way, way back in the day. And he would be like, oh, man. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, house is down. I'm going to lose money here. And he's looking in the building of stuff that he could take. A copy machine, a printer, this or that. It's like, at one point in Florida, you couldn't. They're like, are you affiliated with that Jerry Gray? We're like, no, because they wouldn't rent a building because he ruined so many buildings from stealing stuff, ruining, just things that happen, not paying, bouncing a check, different things like that from over the years. He had a really bad reputation from that. A lot of the buildings throughout the state of Florida, maybe further, I don't know.
I remember trying to book buildings for Eddie Mansfield and running up against that, whether, television or local radio stations or whatever. And invariably somebody, and a lot of times it was Jerry Gray, but even Dusty was accused of, we called the station in Tampa that used to air championship wrestling from Florida. And the guy said, well, do you have $44,000? No. Well, that's what Dusty Rhodes owes me. And if you can get $44,000 to me, we'll put your show on the air. Click. And that was the end of that call.
Was that from the remake, from the reboot of Championship Wrestling? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow,
and,
that's
one of the nice things about running up here is that I haven't run across any negativity because nobody's run here in years. Really? So
that's the thing we talk about. That's the thing we talk about when we talk about the Carny in the business. That's the things when we say Carny. These are the kind of actions that make us say Carny because the things they do, they rip off the building, they bounce a check, they don't pay their TV airtime bill. I mean, it goes on and on and on when we could talk about a million different things,
Right.
But
and again, it's been nice because I've been able to just, start conversations and just, because I have a good reputation. I've never done anything like that. So let's figure out a way that we can all work together and we can help the town or we can help some people or whatever. And there hasn't been any negativity from somebody who's been ripped off by some Carny. So it's been a breath of fresh air. It's been very nice.
I do see that you have a radio sponsor for the show.
Red 102.3 is the local country station here in the market. And
nice.
One of the advantages to Red is that it's independently owned. It's not part of Clear Channel or Cumulus.
Corporate America.
So I don't have to deal with the corporate side. The local decisions, and they're fully on board. They're like, we're spending some money on some airtime, but what we're going to be getting for what we're spending is far
It's
out,
probably
far.
minute. Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah. It's like
Yeah.
the value for what we're getting is tremendous. Plus, they have a really solid reputation in the community. And,
Oh, that's great.
so it's just, and they all kind of know each other, which is good. It really is good because the guy who runs the Downtown Carlisle Association, I'm having coffee with him Tuesday morning, and he's gonna give me a list of businesses that he knows would be interested in some of what I'm going to offer. And what I'm going to offer to them is free help.
Oh, very good. Yeah.
All I want to do is just go and market their business, and people will organically understand, A meets B, that I'm also promoting wrestling, but I'm not going to be like trying to sell them sponsorships. Everybody's on their ass right now. But let's just spread the word about their business. Let them know that there's good stuff happening in downtown Carlisle. And through that, just organically, good things are going to happen.
Sure. Oh, that's great.
And another thing that I'm talking to Red about this week is, and a friend of mine, Joel from England, gave me the idea, have people who can't come to the show buy tickets and then donate those tickets to people who are in need. Because a lot of people, it's $20 for a general admission ticket. You get 2 kids in for free with each ticket. So basically kids are free. But some people don't have the $20 or the $40, whatever.
Right.
So if people want to buy tickets, then they can buy them. We can donate them, and we can give them to people who are, experiencing some tough times. But I'm going to have Red kind of be and I don't want any money from them. I just want them to let me advertise them as the presenting sponsor for this, because I think it'll help our credibility.
That's a great concept, because now you've opened up your ticket sales not to that part of Pennsylvania. You opened it up worldwide. Someone from listening, hearing about it from California or here in Florida might say, you know what? I always do charitable donations. Let me help this and help some, underprivileged families to be able to have a night of entertainment. I think that's great.
Everybody knows a family of 4, because I will say, hey, listen, I got freebies here that people have bought that we want to donate to families in need. Oh yeah, the family over there, on that street, they, husband lost his job, wife's in bad health, whatever. And we'll go right over there and hand them tickets, and hopefully they can go and just have a fun night out and forget about their troubles for a little bit. But it's not going to cost them anything. But yeah, it's just the charitable aspect of people around the world. I know people would, if I could get, I've got like 2,000 general admission tickets. I'm never going to sell them all. But if I could give away, if I have people, let's say 500 that I could give away, it'll be fantastic. What an atmosphere. It'll be awesome.
Well, no, when I ran my promotion, I had a philosophy. I would give a free ticket to anyone that normally wouldn't come to wrestling.
Right.
Because I was under the belief, and I know it was true, once I got them in the door, they see my product, they're going to be entertained, they're going to like it, and they would come back, and I would get another follower, another person to buy a ticket each time. And it worked so many times. I would give away thousands and thousands of tickets of people that would never even known about my product, because even as much advertisement you can do, it's even worse in a bigger metropolitan area like down in South Florida. But not everyone's going to hear about it. So you just give tickets out to everyone. They're going to go to it, and you just build a base that way.
I remember those. I remember those shows.
Atmosphere.
Yeah, I remember those shows for people telling me, that a lot of people had said that they had not been back to a wrestling show since the Florida office closed. That no matter whatever promotion was presenting wrestling on that night, and again, you ran, buildings in South Florida like the War Memorial in Fort Lauderdale, and that used to be a, kind of a regular hotbed, and people had not been to wrestling for 10, 12 years in this time. And they just were like, yeah, just, again, the wrestling of today is not the wrestling that I like, because this was, deep in the heart of the Attitude Era. It wasn't what they liked. They liked more of that presentation that you gave them, and it brought them back. And it also didn't hurt that you had relationships with guys like Barry Windham and Dusty Rhodes and, others to come in and to compete on these cards. So it elevated the, experience that much more for people who had not been a wrestling fan, for whether they had never known about your product or they knew about it, but they only supported it because of the names that you brought on. But when you brought them into the building, they all said to me, this is like it used to be. So when you say wrestling the way it used to be, you accomplished your goal, because it was just that.
Even how great was it to just watch that match with Dusty Rhodes versus Barry Windham? You actually you called that match.
Yeah,
that
did. And it was,
I mean,
again, it took me back to my childhood. It took me back to, because I remember, of course, growing up a Dusty fan, growing up watching Barry just break in, and to see these two and to know their whole saga, how it had evolved through 88, 89, 90, and, now here we are 10 years later, and we're going to represent it. Well, it was a little more than that. It was probably 15 years later. We're going to represent it. And it was just a thrill. It was a thrill to call the entrance, to lay out, to hear the pops, and to see the presence of these two guys in the ring. And it was, I was awestruck the whole time.
And the thing that I really got out of it, made me very happy, is both Barry and Dusty worked their ass off. I mean, they didn't go out there, and because I've seen Dusty on other people's shows where it's like a little gaga, boom, that's it, done. Give me my money, kid. But Dusty came in, he wore his trunks, he didn't wear jeans, he did wear a shirt, but it was a bull rope match that they were in. So he had his trunks on with his Dusty boots on and everything. So it's like, it was for me too. I mean, because Dusty's the reason why I wanted to get into wrestling. And it was really cool because my son was just a baby then. He was, 4, 5, 6 months old or something. I got a picture of me, Dusty, and my little butter sausage, So it was it was cool, it was very brought you back, like you said, it brought me back to my childhood. But I was just so impressed how hard they worked. And I had different guys I used through the years, and I don't know what it was. Like, I had Jake the Snake Roberts work for my promotion, and Jake either is going to do nothing, not show up, no show you, whatever. And I was really worried because I had to give him half up front, and he's the only person I've ever give any deposit, anything ever to. And when I gave him the money, and we've all seen Beyond the Mat and that stuff, so we know up in here, we know how Jake was, and he's changed a lot now from back then. And when I went to go give him the deposit, because he lived in a couple cities over from me, like 15, 20 minutes, he's like, "Hey man, can you do me a favor?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, and meanwhile, I'm in a minivan with my son Chase in a car carrier. Oh no, I'm sorry. My two kids, my Chase and my daughter Isabel, were both like toddlers. "Hey, can you do me a favor?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, this is after I give him the money. "Hey, can you take me on a quick errand real quick, just right down the street?" And I'm like, "Oh my God. What are we going to do, Jake? I'm not going to go on, do something illegal with my kids." And fortunate enough and lucky, he was just going to give his money to his wife to deposit into the bank. But he showed up at the show, and he drew like crazy for me. I had an hour and a half before it started. I had a line going around the building, and he worked his ass off. So it was, I don't have any complaints, because sometimes you get guys come in that just milk it and just, they're in it just for nothing. They just want the money and run. So
And
it was nice to not have those experiences from anyone.
Jake had, a good relationship with Danny Dominion up in the Winnipeg area, and he ran a bunch of shows up there, and Jake worked hard for him. Chase Owens told me the story about being able to wrestle Jake, and that was a thrill. Again, you've got to you just hope that the good Jake shows up, and you're never quite sure. But again, I think that part of that was your reputation within the business. He probably wouldn't have taken the booking if it was somebody else, or he would have taken the booking, taken the money, but not shown up. but the fact that he
Yeah,
showed up and he
exactly.
worked hard means,
Yeah.
means a lot. We've got to talk, let's do this next week. Let's talk about your relationship with New Jack, because boy, oh boy, you could write a book about your relationship with New Jack. I think we should devote a whole episode to him.
Yeah, because that sounds great, because we all know all the stories about New Jack, and boy, there's a lot of stories out there about him.
There are some are true and some are embellished, but there's always a little bit of truth in everything that seemingly came out about him, because he'd be the first one to admit it. It wasn't like
Sure.
New Jack was trying to hide behind whatever he had done. Yeah, he might have had well, this guy did this to me first before I, split his wig or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, so New Jack stories on next week, and Casey, of course, as the R-Truth turns, we'll have to follow more of this saga to find out which side it was on, if it really was the In-Ring Wrestling podcast that swayed things in his favor, so that Ron Killings could be back gainfully employed in the world of professional wrestling.
That's you know what? I'm just glad he's back. Everyone's happy, and we're putting another podcast out. But I'm not going to talk about my phone call with Nick Khan. I was just going to leave that off.
That's right. Probably for the best. We don't want to let too much out. But again, you're all welcome. You're all welcome if you're a fan of R-Truth. Okay, so that's going to do it for this edition, the Better Late Than Never edition of the In-Ring Wrestling podcast. We're going to talk all about New Jack. Boy, Casey had an interesting relationship with one of the more colorful characters ever in pro wrestling history. We'll talk about New Jack next week, so make sure you tune in. That should release, next Sunday night about 8 o'clock?
Next Sunday night, 8 o'clock?
I'm going to be, because I'm going to be traveling, so we're going to pre-record that one. But I'll be in, where am I going to be? Wait, wait. No, I'll be home next week. We can do a live one. Let's do a live one next week and talk about New Jack.
Perfect. Excellent.
I love it. And if any fans want to comment, if they have any New Jack stories, if they had to make special trips with New Jack late night in some town, we'll want to hear from you as well. Yeah, I'll be back next week. It's 2 weeks.
You know what, Kevin? We can do this. We can do this for next week. With our platform here, we can, if anyone wants to sit in our studio during our live broadcast, all they have to do is reach out to us, and we can send them a link, and they can go on live next week, and they can be live in our studio and everything.
So I'm watching us live on YouTube while we're live here on the internet, while we're live here recording this show. I think this is so cool that we're live right there.
I wonder if I can.
I don't know.
Hey, I can do it too.
There it is. What? Only 2 people are watching. I think that's you and me. But that's because we started late.
The girl's supposed to be watching. She better turn that back on. Turn it on!
Turn it on, woman! All right, brother. So let's do that next Sunday live. Join us in the studio.